Before the bright yellow Jeep became an icon, before millions of subscribers tuned in for weekly recoveries, and before the legal storms that threatened to tear everything apart, there was just a farm kid from southern Utah with a gift for fixing things. Matt Wetzel grew up in Washington County, one of 8 children raised on a small family farm where the work was hard and the rewards were measured in sweat and survival. His father ran a custom harvesting operation, taking a Massey Ferguson 750 across southern Utah to bring in barley, milo, oats, and wheat. The family also grew dryland watermelons in some of the most unlikely places near Coal Pits Mesa and the Canaan Gap. It seems to fly in the face of conventional wisdom, but they were amazing. Matt would later recall, "They were the best on the planet. It's ruined me because I can't get a good one now." Those early years shaped Matt in ways that would prove crucial to his later success. On the farm, everything needed to be fixed, and there was nobody else to do it. Old Farmel A tractors, diesel Minneapolis Molines, and aging harvesters demanded constant attention. "My job was to keep the machinery running," Matt explained. "We'd fix up the old equipment and make it work." He discovered early on that he enjoyed the engineering side of things, working on the tractor more than working in the tractor. That mechanical instinct would follow him for the rest of his life. But farming was only part of his education. The other part came from watching the sheer difficulty of making a living from land. Our food is incredibly inexpensive when you compare it with all the work that goes into it, Matt observed. You have to specialize or have value-added products. That lesson about value, about finding ways to make hard work pay, would echo through every decision he made in the years to come. Matt's path to becoming a recovery legend was anything but straight. For 12 years, he worked in the roofing industry, first as an employee and later as a business owner. He and a partner started Skyline Roofing in Hurricane, and the company found success. But Matt's heart wasn't really in it. When he heard about a towing company for sale, something clicked. He bought the assets of a local towing operation and started Red Ryder Towing, diving into an industry where he had no professional experience. "I stepped into the towing industry going full speed," Matt said, and speed was exactly what he needed. Not long after starting Red Ryder, he purchased Winder Towing, a larger, more established company. By 2013, Matt was running a full-scale towing operation in Hurricane, Utah, with contracts that included working with the American Automobile Association. For a while, it was just a standard towing business, the kind that handles breakdowns on the highway and cars that have run out of gas. But Matt was about to discover his true calling. It began around 2009 when calls started coming in for jobs that had nothing to do with pavement. Tourists visiting Zion National Park, off-road enthusiasts exploring Sand Hollow State Park, and rental car drivers who had ventured too far into the desert were getting stuck. They needed someone who could reach them, someone who could pull them out of sand, mud, and rock. Matt started taking those calls. What those early recoveries looked like bore little resemblance to the polished videos fans would eventually see on YouTube. Matt and his crew had the wrong equipment for the job. They used standard tow trucks and heavy cable extensions, dragging cables through deep sand in blistering August heat. You're asking your employee to drag 150 feet of cable out, walk back through the sand, pick up 100 feet of cable extension, go back, drag it all the way, hook it up, come back, and get another one and go out there, Matt described. Well, they're in trouble at that point like heat exhaustion. A job that should have been straightforward would stretch into hours of exhausting labor. It would take 2, 3, or 4 men working together just to get the cable out to a stuck vehicle, then repeating the process multiple times as they winched the vehicle forward in increments. By the time a recovery was complete, the bill could be enormous, often reaching $1,200 or $1,500. For college kids on spring break or families on vacation, those numbers were devastating. Matt found himself in an impossible position. The costs of fuel, equipment wear, and the risk of damaging his rigs often outweighed what he earned. Yet he couldn't bear to charge people the full amount when they were already stranded and scared. "I'd discount like crazy," he admitted. Even after massive discounts, the bills were still crushing to his customers. and Matt was barely breaking even. On top of the financial strain, the recoveries themselves were dangerous and unpredictable. His trucks would get stuck, cables would snap, parts wore out faster than he could replace them. More than once, the rescuer became the one in need of rescue, forced to perform exhausting self-recoveries just to get back to solid ground. It was a constant fight between wanting to help and needing to survive. By 2017, Matt had spent years working himself to exhaustion, barely scraping by on recoveries that seemed to take everything from him. But he had also started doing something unusual. He was sharing his stories. "I used to do personal podcasts to some longtime friends," Matt recalled. One of them was an airline pilot, another a nuclear engineer. They had jobs where they sat for hours and did boring work, and they lived vicariously through Matt's adventures. They're like, "You should write a book, send me pictures." Friends and family kept pushing him toward YouTube. They said, "You can make it worth your time. Some people are doing this for a living." But Matt was technologically impaired by his own admission. "I can't run a laptop," he said flatly. "I'm technologically impaired that way. I love problem solving, but for some reason, I don't like computer problems." He had started a YouTube channel with his brother-in-law's help, but it went nowhere. 2 videos, no traction, a lot of frustration. For a while, Matt gave up on the idea entirely, but something kept pulling him back. He started researching YouTube, studying channels that had succeeded and those that had failed. What are they doing, and what are the successful ones doing that's making them quit their jobs and do this full-time? He wondered. The breakthrough came when Matt discovered LumaFusion, a mobile editing app that worked on his iPhone. He realized he could shoot, edit, and upload entirely from his phone without ever touching a laptop. The technology barrier was gone. "Okay, if I can run this off my iPhone, I can do this," he told himself. What followed was a period of near superhuman effort. Matt was still running a 24-hour towing company, handling calls at all hours. But now, when everybody else went to bed around 10 p.m., Matt would lock himself in his attic and edit videos. He dropped 2 to 3 videos a week, sometimes getting only 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. "I'd catch cat naps wherever I could. But I lived that way for a little over a year and a half," he recalled. The learning curve was brutal. He had to teach himself camera angles, lighting, pacing, and storytelling. He filmed everything on his iPhone, often propping it up with sticks and rocks or handing it to a crew member. The earliest videos were raw and unpolished, but they had something audiences wanted. Within 6 to 8 months, Matt had a video that went viral, hitting over 1 million views. More importantly, he was paying attention to what worked. He started asking the right questions. Why did this video perform, and why did this one not perform? He learned from YouTube experts like Nick Nimmin, absorbing lessons about audience retention and viewer engagement. He learned that telling people to subscribe was the wrong approach, that what really worked was delivering value and letting the audience decide. The sacrifices were enormous. He ran his business during the day and built his channel at night, functioning on almost no sleep for more than 18 months. But the results began to speak for themselves. Subscribers poured in. Views climbed into the millions. Matt had created something from nothing, using just an iPhone and a stubborn refusal to quit. By 2021, his YouTube channel had nearly 900,000 subscribers. In late 2021, at the height of his success, Matt received news that would threaten everything he had built. He was charged with insurance fraud, a second-degree felony that carried the possibility of up to 15 years in prison. The charges alleged that through his company, Winder Towing, Matt had filed fraudulent claims with the American Automobile Association between January 2019 and August 2020, collecting over $15,000 through misrepresentations. The details were devastating. According to court documents, one instance involved a Polaris RZR off-road vehicle towed from Sand Hollow State Park in April 2020. Matt had filmed the recovery and posted it on his YouTube channel, but AAA's policy did not cover off-road vehicles. The owner of the RZR had used a friend's AAA membership, and the claim filed with AAA said a truck had been towed instead of the off-road vehicle. Another case involved construction materials being delivered in place of towing services, with a customer filing false claims at Matt's suggestion. The charge was a second-degree felony, a potential prison sentence that could destroy Matt's career and his family's future. A felony conviction would end everything he had built. His reputation, his channel, his ability to run a business, all of it hung in the balance. But the most painful blow was yet to come. The person who had reportedly sparked the investigation was someone Matt had trusted completely. A man who had worked closely with the company, who had seen how the operation functioned, had reportedly turned on him. The betrayal, as Matt would later tell the story, involved blackmail and threats. The man wanted a $40,000 payout, and he threatened to expose everything he knew if Matt didn't pay. The accusation came at the worst possible moment. Matt's business was growing, his channel was booming, and he had employees and families depending on him. Now, he was spending his days in meetings with lawyers and his nights worrying about whether he would go to prison. The weight of legal scrutiny pressed on him daily, his reputation and livelihood hanging in the balance. Matt's response was complicated. He did not deny that the claims had been filed. Instead, he argued that they represented real work done in real situations. In a phone call with an investigator, Matt took responsibility for the claims, describing them as wrong on the front end but fair on the back. He never submitted a claim that didn't have a legitimate service attached to it, but he had bent the rules on how those services were classified and when they were billed. His attorney, Jason Valles, later explained the situation. My client felt this resolution provided an opportunity to move forward and focus on serving others. Valles said there had been technical violations in the claims, but that Matt's conduct matched the spirit of customer service that AAA was known for. Matt had been trying to help stranded families avoid massive surprise bills, bending rigid rules to protect ordinary people from financial ruin. The court saw things differently. In February 2022, Matt pleaded no contest to a reduced charge, a Class A misdemeanor instead of the original felony. The agreement required him to serve 18 months of probation, repay $15,328 to AAA, and pay an additional $1,745 to Utah's Insurance Fraud Division. He would avoid prison, but the stain on his reputation was permanent. News of the fraud charges spread quickly. Headlines appeared across Utah and beyond. Utah YouTube star charged with insurance fraud. Off-road recovery YouTuber to serve probation for fraudulent AAA claims. For a man who had built his entire career on trust, on the image of the friendly rescuer who helped families in trouble, the accusations cut to the bone. Some viewers concluded that Matt was dishonest, that the good-natured YouTube persona was a mask hiding something darker. Others defended him, insisting that he had only tried to help his customers and had been crushed by a system that refused to bend. The public divided along these lines, and for a time, it seemed as though the man who had pulled so many vehicles out of impossible places might not be able to pull himself free from the trap. The accusations also reignited a quieter stream of criticism that had been building among longtime fans. Some felt that the channel had changed, that the raw, real recoveries of the early years had given way to slick productions and merchandise promotions. To them, the spirit of the show had shifted from genuine adventure to calculated entertainment. At the same time, questions about safety emerged. Watching a rig tumble across dunes or seeing a crew member in a half-modified vehicle looked thrilling on screen, but enthusiasts wondered about the risks. Matt had weathered many storms in his career. He had worked himself to exhaustion, struggled to keep his business afloat, and faced the desert's unforgiving demands. But the weight of public doubt, the sense that millions of strangers might believe he was a fraud, was something different entirely. It was one thing to fight the elements or struggle with finances. It was another to fight the judgment of an audience that had once trusted you completely. What made the legal ordeal even more devastating was its origin. According to Matt's account, The investigation had been pushed forward by someone in his inner circle, a man he called a friend. This person had worked with the company and had intimate knowledge of how the business operated. He had seen how Matt handled cases, how he balanced the demands of customers against the requirements of insurers, how he navigated the gray areas that came with every recovery. The ultimatum was chilling, according to Matt. The man wanted $40,000, and the condition was simple: pay up or face exposure. He threatened to reveal private knowledge of Matt's operations to the authorities, the very kind of information being examined in the legal case. Legal letters arrived, demanding that Matt strip him, his associates, and even members of Matt's family from the videos unless the money was delivered. What made this storm even more crushing was its timing. Matt was already under immense stress from the ongoing investigation. The weight of legal scrutiny pressed on him daily, his reputation and livelihood hanging in the balance. It was at this most fragile moment that someone he had trusted chose to act. For Matt, the most devastating blow was not the court's penalties or the public's judgment. It was realizing that a trusted companion had turned against him, weaponizing his knowledge. At the moment Matt was most vulnerable. He could withstand the accusations. He could shoulder the penalties. But what pierced through everything was the knowledge that betrayal had come from a man he once called a friend. Amid the legal battles and personal betrayals, Matt continued working. He kept filming recoveries and kept building the machines that made his work possible. The most ambitious of these projects was the Morvair, a custom-built recovery rig that became a symbol of his resilience. The story of the Morvair began long before the channel existed. When Matt was just 12 years old, he spotted a 1961 Chevrolet Corvair Lakewood wagon and wanted it desperately. But he didn't have the money. For 28 years, the car stayed in his mind, a dream deferred. Then, in 2016, he finally got the keys after buying it from a friend who had rescued it from a classic breaker's yard. The car was in terrible condition, covered in rust and decades of neglect. But Matt saw something others didn't. The transformation took years. Matt and his crew stripped the Corvair down to its frame and rebuilt it from the ground up. They installed a 5.3-liter LS motor from a Chevy Silverado, paired with a turbo 400 transmission. Dana 60 front axles and Dana 70 rear axles provided the strength needed for serious off-road work. The suspension offered 12 inches of travel at the front and 13 at the rear. What had once been an underpowered rear-engine wagon became a V8-powered, full-frame off-road machine that could go anywhere and pull anything. When the Morvair was finally completed, it stood as more than just a recovery vehicle. It embodied Matt's entire journey, something that might have been dismissed as finished, something that had been left to rust and decay, had been transformed into something stronger and more resilient than before. The car became a fan favorite, a recurring character in the channel story. It accompanied Matt to King of the Hammers and other off-road events, proving its capability time and again. By late 2022, Matt had served his probation and paid his restitution. The felony conviction had been reduced to a misdemeanor, and the immediate legal threat had passed. But the question remained: could he rebuild his reputation? For many people, such a heavy fall would have been the end. It would have been easier to walk away, to shut everything down and live quietly out of sight. The shame, the whispers, the cloud of doubt, all of it might have been too much to carry. But Matt did not vanish. He kept showing up. Week after week, new videos appeared on his channel, each one proof that he was not running away. The same bright energy returned to the screen. The same commitment to rescue, to problem solving, to helping ordinary people stuck in extraordinary situations. He did not pretend the storm never happened. He met it head-on and kept going. The off-road community and millions of followers across the globe did not turn their backs. Quite the opposite. They came together, lifting him higher than ever before. Comment sections filled with words of encouragement. Fans who had watched him for years believed in the man they had come to know, and their trust became his strongest shield. The channel grew despite everything. Subscribers surpassed 1 million and continue to climb, eventually approaching 2 million. Views stretched into the hundreds of millions. Matt kept a steady rhythm, releasing 8 to 12 videos every month, all in his raw, familiar style. No overdubbing, no glossing over the challenge. Just real-time recoveries, the same way he had always done them. Matt also began branching out beyond YouTube. Through platforms like Patreon, he offered behind-the-scenes looks, technical breakdowns, and exclusive content for his most loyal fans. Off-road games returned, drawing thousands of people together in celebration of the passion that connected them. Merchandise lines expanded, giving fans another way to support the work. His team stayed strong and familiar, with trusted faces like Tom and Ed remaining a constant presence. Business also shifted in important ways. No longer leaning on contracts with large companies like AAA, Matt's reputation itself became the key. People came directly to him, trusting his name, his skill, and his record. He had proved that his future was not chained to anyone else's rules. It belonged to him and to the people who believed in him. The hardest years of Matt's life were also the ones that revealed his true character. He had been tested by the desert, by financial ruin, by criminal charges, and by betrayal from within. Any one of those challenges could have broken him. Instead, he emerged on the other side, bruised but unbowed. What made the difference was the community he had built. When the accusations came, millions of fans stood by him. When his legal troubles dominated the headlines, his subscribers sent messages of encouragement. When his name was dragged through the mud, his audience remembered the man they had watched recover 1,000 vehicles, the man who had never turned away a stranded family, the man who discounted bills he desperately needed so that college kids and tourists could afford to get home. Matt's story is a reminder that success is never simple. Behind every viral video and glowing review lies a history of struggle, sacrifice, and failure. Matt worked himself to exhaustion for years before anyone noticed. He made mistakes, some of which were costly in ways he never anticipated. He trusted the wrong person and paid a heavy price. But he also refused to quit. He learned from every failure, adjusted his approach, and kept moving forward. He poured his heart into building something that mattered, and when that thing was nearly destroyed, he started over. There is a reason so many fans have stuck with him through everything. They see themselves in his journey, the mistakes, the setbacks, the stubborn refusal to give up. They know that a person who has been knocked down and still gets back up is someone worth believing in. Matt's life now is busier than ever. His channel continues to grow, his fleet of recovery vehicles keeps expanding, and his reputation in the off-road community has never been stronger. The legal troubles that once threatened to end everything are now a chapter in his past, a story he has addressed openly and moved beyond. The betrayal from his former friend remains a painful memory, but it has been overshadowed by the loyalty of millions who never stopped watching. In the end, the heartbreaking story of Matt from Matt's off-road recovery is not a story of tragedy. It is a story of redemption. It is the story of a man who faced the worst that life could throw at him and somehow found the strength to keep going. It is a story that reminds us that success is not about avoiding failure. It is about refusing to stay down.